Greetings from Carl Berner and welcome to this studio release. Today I'm going to present work number 325 and the title is Maelstrom. It is a work in the tablets series. The tablet series is word paintings that have words as motifs instead of images or abstract things. Tablet, of course, is a word that makes you think of iPads and stuff like that, but also before that existed, tablets was these old things that we inscribed words on. One reference is, of course, the famous stone tablets from the Bible. But in the beginning of using language, it was used for many purposes to make, for example, records of storage and laws and other stuff. They were kind of made into mud tablets and stuff like that. So tablets is about our way of kind of wanting to master reality and to shape reality through language, you might say. Yes, tablet used to be a part of the template compilations where I made templates with words before, but now I'm doing it in the res ipsa compilation. Means I'm writing the words directly in the wet filler using, I showed you before, I can show it again with this tool that has a pointy end, but I'm placing the panel on the floor and writing with this long stick to make it a little bit more difficult and to make the lines have more tension. This work is a little bit different than the others in the tablet series because they usually have a title that works as a part of the work in itself. The title, you need to know the title to really understand the whole work. So it has a language component that kind of is only language, because a title isn't might not be in the work, but it's kind of connected to the work. But you need to have a sort of something more to know that. But still, it's counted as a part of the work. But with this work, I haven't done that. Everything is in the painting, so the title is the same as the words on the panel, as you will see in a minute. So this work might be a little bit more direct than usually, and I would like to say something about how I view art before I reveal the work. I think that art should be treated in a way as a psychoanalyst would treat an analysand, that it should work through silence or perhaps slightly seemingly innocent comments that the viewer or the society kind of gets aware of its own repressed desires and expose them and maybe get aware of them. Even if this might lead to some insight, we don't know if it actually does good, but this is also the way psychoanalysis work, and I think that art in a way should work the same way. So you might say a piece of art like this, who is almost like an agitprop artwork, a very clear statement, should be counter that way of idea of making art But I don't think so, because I feel that when you say something that's very obvious, it's almost like staying silent. So it might, in the same way, trigger reflection and introspection, because it's so obvious in a sense, I feel. So I think it's interesting to do artwork that also kind of has a clear statement, but still has something, of course, something else to it, some mystery to it as well, when you reflect a little bit more on it. Okay, so let's look at this work. This is Maelstrom, Maelstrom, and as you can see, I have used the edges of the frame to not as a baseline, but to kind of stabilize the text and also the reading direction. So you have to kind of, at least in your mind, turn yourself around to read this in the same way as, I guess, a maelstrom functions, because a maelstrom is a word for a whirlpool or a vortex, almost, you might say, something spinning around and sucking you in. Yes. So mainstream. It is usually perceived as a sort of the category for the majority, for the what everybody or the most people kind of consider right, the opinions of the majority. That is what's considered the mainstream. So in a way, we look at it almost like a neutral category that kind of just fixes itself around this. But I think that is wrong. I think that the category of the mainstream is not neutral. It's proactive and invasive in its nature. Of course. What is viewed as normal and mainstream, it changes over time, but I'm not thinking of that. I'm thinking of that actually the people who define themselves within the mainstream, they are actively kind of, or the mainstream is actively trying to influence anything that's outside the mainstream, and especially what's on the edges, in the fringes of the mainstream. And that is because I think that in a society defined by majority culture, and I think our society is like that, many people feel a need to kind of define what is the culture, the majority culture, and it's a struggle all the time about this. And even if we don't say it out loud, it's still there. But a society who are defined by the majority culture always experience the minority as a threat to its existence. I would say so. They constantly, the mainstream tries to influence the marginalized to submit. To kind of submit to the values of the mainstream and the notions of the mainstream, or to simply go away, to disappear from the map altogether. But it's more to this, because it's not that this power, that this executive power is coming from outside. It's usually internalized, I would say. So you feel more of an inner pressure to adapt to normality. Almost like a suction, like a whirlpool. You are sucked into this, and it's hard to resist in the long run. But it is not always like power is not always repressive. This is Michel Foucault's ideas that power can be productive. So it's not always like I mean this way of attacking the marginalized. It could be understood as in the same way as from the famous novel by Axel Sandemose about the little Danish town called Jante, where they had something called the Jante law, that nobody should think they are better than us. So this is kind of famous in the Nordic countries, at least, this Jante law that you should stay within the normalcy. But I think this movement to kind of this suction that the mainstream have, that this almost alluring or attractive power, what do you call it, that you are kind of blinded by it and in a way flattered by it and kind of tricked into liking it. It's not always repressive and forbidding. Could also be productive. You feel that you want to be part of a community and you want to contribute to that, and you feel this is warm and nice, and you are kind of doing good stuff within this community. And in Norway we have something where I live now. We have a strong sense of community, and we have something called dugnadsånd, and it means that you should have like a spirit to contribute to your community, and we have special any like football team or organization, and even like the neighborhoods, they organize once or twice a year a dugnad, a sort of gathering where you do work together that needs to be done. And of course this is very nice, but it's also always this discussion about is it voluntary to be part of this, or is it like expected of you? So this is part of what I mean this productive suction into the mainstream in a way. Yeah, because yes, so this desire for conformity that the subject has, it is kind of dangerous in the same time, because what defines you as a person, as a subject, is in a way also what kind of differentiate you from everything else. You are a subject, and you know that you are unique, and there's something unique about you. So you can't be completely like everybody else, right? Because then you would cease to exist. So it's also this kind of threat inside of this, that they are kind of sucked into this, and this will be also lead to the obliteration, to the disappearance of the subject in a sense. So you have this push and pull in two directions with this the relationship between the subject, the individual, and the mainstream or the community. So it's kind of a neurotic and impossible relationship where the subject is oscillating between the need to belong and the thirst for freedom, I guess, because freedom is also the definition of the subject. You have to have a free will to be a subject. If you can't take free decisions, you can't define yourself as a subject. Yes. So this was my major thought about this, but in the spirit of what I said in the beginning about psychoanalysis, I could say also that this means a lot to me personally, I think, because when I was very young, like 10 or 11 years old, I for the first time realized something about the social structure of the community I lived in. I mean, my classmates and my friends, that there are some sort of hierarchy going on, and there are some people who are kind of very few, almost only one at the top that's most popular and most successful, and there can be some that are marginalized and ostracized and kind of bullied usually, or ignored at the bottom, but the main part of the group are kind of in the middle, in the mainstream. And this revelation to me, I felt it almost like a revelation, made me very almost nauseous, and I kind of wanted to remove myself from everything of that. I didn't want to be part of the mainstream. I didn't want to be at the bottom or the top either. I just wanted to get out of this whole thing, I guess. And I think that's maybe why I finally kind of turned into becoming an artist. I don't know, but perhaps a way to try to get out of this constant hierarchy of people with and how equality in a way, the equality between people are always kind of ignored and counteracted upon. Yes, and also in a way, when I became more politically aware, I realized I'm coming from I'm a privileged person. I come from a privileged country and from a privileged class within that country, and this is also something that I kind of made me, in a way, distant myself a little bit from my from where I was from. I guess for some years, but then I had family and children, and I realized, not at the time, but afterwards, when some years have passed and the children are bigger and a lot of things have happened, I realized that I was sort of sucked into this mainstream way of living, because you want to create security and a home for your children. It was very easy to kind of fall into this way of living that was predefined, I guess, and it's the only thing you knew about, and everybody kind of welcomed you into this to this way of doing stuff. So there's a lot of things here. So I guess this artwork is a little bit an agitprop artwork. You can say, stay away from the mainstream, it will suck you in. Yes, I'm going to show you some close-ups and then we can wrap this up. Here is the work from the side. See, the frame is about 5 centimeters thick, and here you can see all the cracks and bubbles on the surface. Even though it's sanded off and it's smooth, it's still quite raw. Okay, I'm going to put the camera back now on the tripod. Yes, one final thing before we say goodbye. In the promotion of this, I kind of said that I made a terrible mistake right after the last image that I posted in my social media accounts. And actually, it was not so very terrible, but I misspelled the main Maelstrom. I spelled it with an OE, like you usually do when you, because in the Swedish we have a word called Maelstrom with a Swedish Ö with 2 points on top of the O. And usually when you kind of translate that into English, you write it OE. But I think Maelstrom is coming from a Dutch word. So it should be with just one O. And I finished the whole work, and I was supposed to present it to you when I luckily realized my mistake, because I feel, even though I kind of usually like mistakes and I kind of welcome them because something unexpected had happened, I felt that this misspelling was kind of would draw attention to itself too much. So I took away this part and I put in new filler, and then I wrote this O in it. And you can see here, because this was actually the first work where I did this writing with a stick, and I hadn't learned that I should wait an hour or so the filler gets a little bit drier. It's easier to write in it. So I did it immediately, and you can see that the letters here are kind of a little bit dissolved because of that. But then I did some other works, or the Malespere work that you saw last studio release, that I waited like an hour or so, and then I could write in it. And I did this with the O, so you can see it's a little bit clearer and more defined. And I was just kind of hoping that you would see that it was some repairs here and fixing, that maybe there would be a slight difference in the white, in the shade of white, but it was actually perfect. So you couldn't see any difference. But this is, a little bit of a background behind this work. So thank you for listening to this studio release, and I hope you see you next time. Bye bye.